seeing everyone here, and it is just about 2 o'clock. If the clerk would go ahead and call the roll, take attendance, we'll begin.
Chairman Cecil.
Here.
Senator Lily Van Lowe.
Here.
Senator Tim Van Lowe.
Here.
Excellent. Senator Hawley.
Here.
Senator Moan.
Here.
Senator Ho.
Here.
Senator Norman.
Here.
Senator Wong.
Here.
Senator Harris.
Here.
And Senator Sunni.
Here.
Excellent. Everyone is present.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. All right, so today we're going to be taking up 2 bills. We're going to be starting off with, I'm sorry, Mr. Clerk, what bill are we starting off with? Is that HB 4353, the EpiPen administration?
Yes, let's start with HB 4353,
All
epinephrine
right.
administration.
Thank you so much. All right, so if the sponsor of HB 4353 would introduce their bill and be prepared to testify on that, we'll begin whenever you're ready. Who will be speaking to sponsor HB 4353? All right, Senator Wong, thank you. Please proceed.
I, Senator Wong of Caucus Logos Blue, sponsors HB 4353 concerning EpiPen administration. About 1 in every 13 kids have serious allergies that result in an anaphylactic reaction, then death in as less as 15 minutes. The EpiPen, or epinephrine autoinjector, is a medical device used to delay the allergic reaction until further help is available. This bill will require all Michigan schools to have at least 2 EpiPens at the school at all times, as well as employees trained to utilize them properly. Funds will be provided by private charities or the Michigan Department of Education. This bill will provide a safer environment for all Michigan students in accordance to the government's responsibility to protect public health.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate that. And if the opposing caucus has comments on the bill, you can begin now. And at this point, as you guys have been instructed, this will be a time for debate. These are your fellow committee members who we just met as we called the roll, and you are earning their vote. So please be attentive, and we'll let the opposing caucus, just raise your hand if you'd like to be recognized and speak. So who'd like to speak in response to the bill first? Senator Norman, please proceed.
Thank you. Senator Wong, you say that the chance of death after an allergic reaction is has risen about 13%, if I understood you correctly. Did you know that in fact less than 1% of cases that are a result of a allergic reaction end in death? It's not as high as one might imagine. And because of that, I frankly don't see a need for this bill. I don't see a need to protect children if they're not dying at all. I mean, sure, have cases rose? Yes, but that's because the reason why there's no death is because the parents are already doing something about it. So I don't see any reason why the state has to get involved if there's not really an issue here at all.
Senator Wong.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Even though there is a very small amount of students who actually need this bill, this bill also offers policies that offer protection from liability for school employees, as well as proper procedures that the school needs to take to enforce this kind of thing.
So Senator Wong and Senator, Harris are on the same party for this bill. So Senator Wong or Harris, you can feel free to answer this. We have some very popular areas here in the state, of course, and their high schools are populated accordingly. So when you are looking at a school with possibly 1,000 students, what makes you think that 2 EpiPens is really going to be sufficient that will address in any way the systemic problem that you say is there? Senator Harris?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have an amendment to this bill to provide an increase, if necessary, to the school stock of these treatment devices, stated as 1 pen per school plus an additional pen per 100 students to be distributed evenly in easily accessible public locations throughout the school.
Are you proposing that amendment at this time, Senator?
I believe Senator Wong, Mr. Chair, is sponsoring that particular amendment.
Senator Wong, do you propose that amendment then?
Mr. Chair, yes, I propose that amendment.
All right, committee members, I did just share a Google link in the chat for you. I apologize for not getting that to you ahead of time. Senator, what amendment is this? And I'll share my screen if we need to this first time to share that amendment over. Senator Wong, what amendment? What's the name of the amendment?
Is amendment number B4.
B4 under HB 4353. Wonderful. And then committee members, just real quick, do I need to share my screen to share this over, or were you guys able to get that? Good. Okay.
I'm good.
Wonderful. Thank you all. So I'll just read the amendment briefly here. And so that's, again, amendment number B4. Senator Emma Wong, offers to amend page 5, line 8, after 2 epinephrine auto injectors, and she'll be inserting the language with an additional epinephrine auto injector per 100 students. And then Senator, just would you again recap what this amendment will do, or why you see a need for this amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Because some schools are all different sizes. For large schools, 2 epinephrine auto injectors are obviously not enough, since the chance is 1 in 13. We estimated that 1 per 100 students would be a better number.
Are there any questions from the committee before we, yes, Senator Van Loo, Tim Van Loo.
Thank you. Why would more than two be required at any one time? I would think that you're not having a risk of having more than 2 on any given day. And so I would think that if 1 was used, you would simply buy a replacement within a short period of time. I don't understand why we need to keep more than 2 on hand.
Senator Harris, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We also require that these treatment devices be stored throughout the school so that no matter where a student is within a school, there is a treatment device within a very easily accessible location, not far enough away that if a school is reacting on one side of the school, student is reacting on one side of the school and the treatment device is on the other side, staff doesn't need to go all the way over to the other side of the school to retrieve a treatment device. And that simply wouldn't be possible with only 1 pen.
Senator Moen.
So you mentioned that you would need multiple for covering a large school, but if that's the case, wouldn't you be better off deciding the number of pens based off of the square footage of the institution? And I also wonder, if you have that many more, do you also have funding included in this bill for all of the refrigerators and other storage requirements that would be needed by having the increased number of pens?
Senators, do we have a response to that question? Senator Harris?
As a legislator, I don't think it would be possible to predict and make legislation considering the square footage of every individual school in Michigan. And so we took into account the information that we had available and practically developed a system to quantify both the price and the quantity of the treatment devices necessary. And these treatment devices don't need to be refrigerated. So the storage requirements should be relatively small, just within, for example, a glass case placed into a wall similar to a fire extinguisher.
Senator Van Loo?
I'd like to ask another question about the layout part of this bill. So as an educator myself, sometimes when the state hands down a mandate with kind of vague specifications, it's seen as an infringement on our professional judgment. So do you plan on giving more direction about where these EpiPens should be distributed throughout the school, or are you going to leave it more up to the discretion of the school? What I believe the language of your amendment was easily accessible public locations.
Senator Wong?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, the school will have the freedom to choose where is easily accessible public location. We will not specify where exactly that is.
And I think Senator Harris, do you have a response to that question as well?
I would like to add to what Senator Wong said. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Then we'll recognize Senator Green immediately following. So go ahead, Senator Harris.
Yes, I would
I'm sorry, Senator Ho, I'm sorry, of the Green Caucus. So Senator Ho, you'll be recognized immediately following. Thank you.
I would like to repeat, as before, it was not possible for us as legislators to review the layout of every single school in Michigan, which comes to a number of about 3,550. And so I find the school administration much more capable of deciding the layout of these storage devices.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Ho.
All right, well, I had a few questions about the funding. I'll just ask one for now. EpiPens, they do expire after 18 months after they are manufactured. And so how would this affect the school funding?
Senator Wong.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This would not affect the school funding much because in the funding plan, we already considered the fact that it's how much money yearly. It includes the cost of replacing expired EpiPens.
Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Wong, question for you. It states in the bill that the funding is supposed to be raised by the school itself. Why is that funding not just given to the school by the state for the EpiPens if the state is going to indeed require these EpiPens in schools?
If I can, point of order, Mr. Chair, point of order, I think we're still on the amendment. That
We-
question.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. So I think this conversation has started to pull away from the amendment, Senator Norman. So if there are no further questions to the amendment, I would, Senator Holly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my question for the sponsors of the amendments, kind of twofold. One, the legislation currently drafted directs that the school boards are to provide for possession of at least 2 epinephrine auto-injectors. So are we concerned then that the school boards are not able to appropriately determine for themselves the number of EpiPens that would be required to appropriately protect their students? And my second question, Mr. Chair, relates to the easily accessible public locations provision in the amendment. Is there some sort of, or are there security concerns, or have the sponsors taken into account security or access concerns if these are to be easily accessible?
Yeah, Senator Harris, if you have a quick response, I would like to vote on the amendment as soon as the conversation seems to be continuing to draw towards the bill itself. So Senator Harris, please go ahead and respond to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To answer your second question first, Senator, I find the school administration perfectly capable of regulating its students and the accessing of these treatments. And to answer the first question, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Would you mind repeating that first question, Senator?
Certainly. So the bill is currently drafted, says that the school boards are to provide for the possession of at least 2 epinephrine auto-injectors, which suggests that they could provide for more if they feel that they need that. So doesn't the amendment then take away the discretion of the school board, or is there a reason that we don't trust the discretion of the school board to ensure appropriate EpiPens for their student population?
Senator Harris, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator, due to the provision of liability protection included also in the bill, we found it necessary to specify more specific guidelines to ensure that the protection is not abused and is warranted.
Thank you, Senator. All right, with that, I would like to entertain a motion to vote on this amendment. Senator Van Loo, do I have a second? I'm sorry, Senator Sonny. With that, Mr. Clerk, if you would call the roll for the vote, the roll call vote.
Chairman Cecil.
Yes.
Senator Tim Van Loo.
No.
Senator Lily Van Loo.
No.
Senator Suni.
Yes.
Senator Moan.
No.
Senator Hawley.
No.
Senator Norman.
No.
Senator Ho.
No.
Senator Wong, excuse me.
Yes.
Senator Harris.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, for Amendment B3, we have 4 yes votes and 6 no votes.
Wonderful. I'm sorry, could you repeat that, Mr. Clerk? I didn't.
Yes, for Amendment B3, we have 4 yes votes and 6 no votes.
All right, seeing an insufficient number of votes, of course, the amendment does not pass. But I would like to commendate Senator Harris on her last response to Senator Hawley's question. Well done, you guys. So we're going to continue with that brief encouragement to all of you guys. You've done an excellent job on the amendment. We're going to continue on with discussion to the bill itself. So the amendment is not passed, so we are again considering the bill as written. Are there any questions from committee members? Senator Howe.
If this bill is passed, essentially what's going to happen is the government is going to subsidize EpiPens, and the EpiPen companies, they can use this opportunity to increase their prices to make more money. Wouldn't this hurt just also normal customers who are wishing to buy EpiPens for privately and not part of the school?
Senator Wong.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, private individuals have health insurance that cover EpiPens if they need it. So, and also, Mylan holds a monopoly in the market, so the prices of the other businesses wouldn't go up farther than Mylan.
Senator Norman, I think you had a question I saw. Or no? All right. Senator Van Loo.
Thank you. Given the current budget shortfall projected for the year for the state of Michigan is somewhere between 2 and 6 billion, people are reporting, not to mention each school district facing millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars at least in budget shortfalls, having to lay off teachers and so forth. As sympathetic as we can be towards maybe a few of the students who would benefit from this, doesn't it seem like this year is not the year to pass a bill and put extra financial burden on the state and the school districts?
Senator Harris.
Respectfully, Senator. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Given the rarity of these events, lives are being affected each day, not starting next year and not starting the year after that, but today and yesterday. And so I find it necessary to provide for these lives. What is the price of a life, Senator, in your opinion?
Senator Van Loo, do you wish to respond? Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's a good question. You know, what price do you put on a life? And is it $1 million? Is it $2 million? Is it $3 million? You know, how much is this going to cost spread out over the whole state of Michigan? And how many lives are going to be saved in the next year? And so I guess I would have to see how many lives have been lost in schools on an annual basis because we did not have enough EpiPens in the school.
If I could ask a quick question of the sponsors, was my understanding that the school itself raises this money, not that this isn't coming from the state budget, or am I mistaken in that? Senator Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To answer your question, the schools are asked by this legislation to secure private funding themselves, but if they are unable to, they may apply to the state for reimbursement.
Thank you. I would think, Senator Van Loo, with the amount of fundraisers, almost I would dare say obnoxious amount of fundraisers schools seem to have these days, that they could prioritize a few life-saving EpiPens over other things, New Jersey's perhaps, and then hopefully not affect the state budget. So to that point, though, you are correct that it does affect the school's budget and the bottom line, but speaking to the state budget, I think that comment is inaccurate. Senator Moan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just regarding the budget and funding, if we're going to push that off onto the schools or the community around the schools, because most of school budget seems to come from particularly property values, doesn't this disproportionately burden the poorer members of our society who are already going to have the financial troubles of even affording an EpiPen if they can't get one through the school?
Senator Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This program should not have a very large effect on the state budget, especially not enough to warrant an increase in taxes, given that even should every single school in Michigan be unable to secure private funding, the annual cost of it would come only to about $3.1 million. And the Michigan budget comes to about 60 billion. So this amount of 3.1 million is of very little consequence.
Senator Sonny?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Norman, would you yield to a question real quick?
I'm sorry, Senator, can you explain what you're referring to?
Yeah, I just have a quick question for you.
Yes.
Earlier, you referenced children aren't dying, and I was wondering if there were numbers that you were referencing. I haven't heard any numbers yet today.
Thank you, Senator. Yes, I have done research on this, and there are reports out there which say that the chance of someone dying from a allergic reaction is less than 1%. It's about 0.5% of all cases end in death.
Okay. And do you have, in your research, did you find any numbers on children in Michigan, students in Michigan who had died or had not died in Michigan?
I did not find. I did not find any cases in Michigan where someone had died because of this. Like I said, they're very rare and few and far between.
Okay, thank you. Senator Wong, would you yield for a question? Senator, are you aware of any cases of children of students in Michigan schools, specifically public schools? I think that's the only place this bill applies to, who died because the school did not have an EpiPen.
I do not know of any specific cases. And it is indeed true that this is a rare occurrence. Kids rarely die of allergies like this.
Do you know the motivation for this bill, or was there an incident that inspired this one?
This bill is mostly a precaution against just in case there is a student who needs an EpiPen and there isn't one nearby.
Okay. So Senator Wong or perhaps Senator Harris, if we are not aware of any children dying in our state, as Senator Norman said, why should we spend potentially $3.1 million next year during a budget deficit to fund this? Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Sonny. I would like to point out one thing in that this bill was written back in 2013. So have just a bit of understanding when we talk about shortfalls and when the bill was actually written. The rules within SSI of how that timeline works are a bit fuzzy back and forth, and I apologize for not clarifying that sooner. Nevertheless, budgetary issues are always a high concern. And to your point, Senator Sonny, which was excellently put, I'd like to ask Senator Harris, Senator Wong, I mean, when we're talking about deaths, obviously those are hard to track down. I'm not sure how much time you put into it. But is that the only adverse effect that we're trying to mitigate here? I mean, I myself, my younger brother is severely allergic to bees. And at one time when we discovered this, he was stung, and we did not have an EpiPen, and he went into shock and nearly died on the drive to the hospital because where we were at, we did not have an EpiPen because we were unaware of his allergy. He did not die, thankfully, but he did have some severe medical issues that resulted from that reaction and not having access to an EpiPen. Is that something you're concerned about? You've only mentioned death, so I'd like you to elaborate, I guess, on the benefits of this bill, because as Senator Sonny put it, it seems like the the research is not in your favor as to the extreme need of this bill. Senator Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To answer that question, Senator Sonny's inquiry, there are more than one side effect. There is more than one side effect to these reactions. They can be quite mild considering the magnitude of them. And compared to death, they can be quite mild, as in just swelling of different parts of the face, or they can go as far as, if untreated especially, resulting in brain damage due to the lack of oxygen over a period of time. And also, according to the CDC, 25% of the students that have anaphylactic reactions while at school aren't aware of having any severe food allergy. And so I find it very good idea to have these procedures in place to protect these children that don't know to protect themselves.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Moan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now, you mentioned that most students are unaware. Is there a particular demographic of students that is most likely to be unaware? Is it uniform across the board, or is it mostly younger students who haven't been alive long enough to come across a reaction that we should be more concerned with, and perhaps changing the distribution methods a bit to focus on a more vulnerable group?
Senator Harris.
The CDC did not divulge the demographics of this particular report.
Thank you. And I will just, Senator Ho, go ahead.
Sort of just a clarification question. The last part of the bill does say that the school board should attempt to obtain funding or resources from private sources. So I was just wondering, why is private funding in this bill? Why is it needed?
Senator Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator, to avoid any unnecessary strain on federal budgets and state budgets, which are being funded by the taxes of everyone within that state, we request that schools obtain private funding that is constituted of money that's already set aside for schools, and so that any money already in the state's budget can be used for anything else.
Now, please don't, committee members, please don't mistake this for me advocating for this bill. I would like to share, though, in my research and preparing for this committee meeting, one statistic that I'm disappointed to not have heard already. There was a report done by Science Daily back in 2013-2014 school year, in which 1 in 10 schools in the United States said that they had had a case of a severe allergic reaction in their school in that school year. That's 1 in 10. And among those students, 22% of them had no known or no previously known allergies. So just responding to the fact that this is an issue, I would love to have heard more about if this is prevalent among our schools, if this is really as severe of an issue as it's been made out to be. It is there and it may be real, but I've not seen the pressing need. Senator Lily Van Lowe, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question related to the training and liability part. So if Senator Green's question is about the need for this, I yield to him. Just quick.
Sorry, and I apologize. I did make the same error myself, but it is
Senator Norman.
Off logo screen. So I apologize again, Senator Norman, and please respond to Senator Van Lowe.
Senator Van Lowe, could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, I was just wondering if your question was going to be about the need and the mortality rate that for having an anaphylactic reaction, because I would like to shift the conversation over to the liability part of this bill, but I don't want to move the conversation back and forth unnecessarily.
If I could just make one statement really quickly. Senator Wang, you say that the percentage of students who don't know they have a allergic reaction is about 25%. If that is the case, then shouldn't we be seeing more deaths? Shouldn't we be seeing deaths, period? It would seem to me that if this is really a big issue and if 25% of students don't know they have an allergic reaction, I would think that the fatality rate would be higher.
Senators, any response? All right, Senator Van Loo, please go ahead with your question then.
Yeah, my question is for Senator Wong or Senator Harris, either one. So this bill provides liability coverage for educators or school staff who administer the EpiPen unnecessarily. So my question is, one, are the impacts of administering an EpiPen unnecessarily warranted enough to have liability? Is it too dangerous to have them in the schools if we have to offer liability? And then my second question is, will the training that's required in this bill be enough to help teachers have confidence when they administer the EpiPen?
Senator Harris?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To answer your question, Senator, the liability is in place to ensure that school staff is not held responsible for the death or injury of a student, even having been treated once been taken to a hospital, for example, for further treatment. There are little to no harmful side effects of administering epinephrine treatments. Even mistakenly, the only side effects reported are a energy burst for about 15 minutes that makes somebody jittery and then ends.
Just real quick, if I can, I'd like to ask Logos, excuse me, Logos Green, a quick question. In your stated opposition to this bill, do you not, are you advocating that this isn't prevalent of enough of an issue to address at all? Or are you saying there's a better way to address it? If so, I'd love to hear that at this time. I know you guys did draft a few amendments. If we're not going to take those up, I'd like just to move on and not drag this out. If you guys don't have a solution to this, if you're saying that this bill is just not necessary, let's have that out and let's have a vote, because I think we have had a very well-rounded discussion at this point. So if one of you would like to respond, do you intend to try to make this bill better? Do you intend to propose a better solution? Or are you saying that this is not the answer? And I'm, oh, sorry. So Senator Ho or Norman, do you are you ready to propose an amendment to help to improve this bill and possibly create a solution to this, or are you firm in advocating that this bill is just not necessary? Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There was one concern we had about the bill itself, and that's the fact that there does not seem to be any coverage in the bill for after-school activities. As the bill is read now, if one or two trained professionals are all a school has to administer EpiPens, then for every single after-school activity or event on school grounds, one of those trained professionals would have to be present at all times. And personally, I would like to propose amendment G2 to the bill. which states that a registered school employee must be present at all times during after-school activities and all activities on school occurring on school grounds. And that would eliminate that possibility at all.
All right, now, senators, is anyone familiar with, because I certainly am not, what kind of training is actually required when we say a trained individual? How extensive is this training? Senator Van Loo?
In my experience as an educator, we had maybe a 20 to 40-minute webinar and hands-on demonstration with a trial EpiPen.
Thank you, Senator. It's very appreciated. So Senator Norman, instead of this 20-minute training, which is what is currently required for use of an EpiPen in a school, you're advocating that instead it should be a professional nurse and that those nurses should be present at all after-school activities?
Chairman, thank you. I'm not advocating that it is instead a trained professional. I'm not saying that people cannot go through the training that Senator Van Loo mentioned. I'm saying that it's someone who has gone through that training would need to be present at all activities if this bill was to truly be effective.
I apologize. Thank you for clarifying. In that, I would understand, and Senator Van Loo, maybe you can address this. At after-school events that are sponsored by the school, I assume there are school personnel there. And especially if it's a sporting event or as such, would those employees have already undergone this kind of training?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this, okay. All right. Well, we can, yeah, Senator Tim Van Loo, please.
Yeah, I think you had asked Chairman before whether if this amendment and or the other amendment are passed, if Lagos Green would be in favor of this bill.
Yes.
I'm still wondering if this one and or the other one are passed, if that's enough to make them in favor of the bill. If not, then I don't know if it's worth our time to take up the motion, take up the amendments.
Thank you for bringing that back up, Senator. I guess members of the committee, I would ask the question to you then, especially Lagos Green, is this amendment in your minds, is this what is needed to make this a good bill? Or are you just trying to, if you are not confident that you can stop this bill, are you just trying to make it better? And Senator Norman or Ho can answer that.
Thank you, Chairman. This amendment was just to fix a potential flaw we saw in the bill. So if it passes, we feel like it will make the bill better if the bill does end up passing.
All right, thank you very much. All right, then we'll go ahead and entertain a motion to vote on this amendment. Senator Norman, do I have a second? Senator Tim Van Loo, thank you. All right, Mr. Clerk, would you call the roll to vote on Amendment G2?
Yes, Chairman Cecil.
Nay.
Senator Tim Van Loo.
Yes.
Senator Lily Van Loo.
No.
Senator Suni.
No.
Sorry, repeat that, Senator Suni. No, okay. Senator Moan.
Yes.
Senator Hawley.
No.
Senator Norman.
Yes.
Senator Ho.
Yes.
Senator Wong.
Yes.
And Senator Harris.
No.
Okay, and to clarify, Senator Lily Van Loo, you voted no, correct? Okay.
That was a yes to that no, Mr. Clerk. Thank you.
Yeah.
No,
Excellent.
I vote no.
Okay. And this is for the bill, correct?
This is for the Amendment G2.
Oh, for the Amendment G2. Okay, my apologies. Okay, for Amendment G2, we have 5 yes votes and 4 no votes.
With a sufficient number of votes, the bill does, the amendment does pass. And I do have my gavel here, so we'll add that into the bill. So we will now entertain a motion to pass the bill as amended. Do I have a motion? Perhaps from the sponsoring members. That's Senator Harris. Thank you very much. Do I have a second? Senator Wong, thank you. All right, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll on a vote for HB 4353 with amendment.
Okay, for a vote on HB 4353, Chairman Cecil,
Nay.
Senator Tim Van Lowe,
No.
Senator Lily Van Lowe,
No.
Senator Suni.
Yes.
Was that a yes? Yes. Senator Moan,
Yes.
Senator Hawley,
Yes.
Senator Norman,
No.
Senator Ho,
No.
Senator Harris,
Yes.
and Senator Wong.
Yes.
Okay, as to HB 4353, we have 5 yes votes and 5 no votes. I think I counted this incorrectly. Nope.
There should be 10 votes.
There
Yeah,
are
10 votes.
technically
5 yes votes and 5 no votes. I guess I counted the votes for the amendment incorrectly. So, but that still did pass. So, oh wait a minute here.
With the tie we passed, Mr. Clerk?
So no, there's yeah. So for the amendment on G2, we actually did have 5 yes votes and 5 no votes. So
The amendment did not pass. I apologize.
the amendment did not pass. That is my bad. I apologize.
And then on the bill?
And then on the bill, we also have 5 yes votes and 5 no votes.
Members of the committee, unfortunately, without a majority, the bill cannot pass. I will gavel that, and the bill does not pass. Well done, though, all of you. That was well done. We had a good debate. I would have loved to have seen some more numbers as to the need of this bill. It just was not impressed upon me that the need was really there. But you guys did a very good job, and I appreciate that. All right, Mr. Clerk, well, I guess not Mr. Clerk, members, we will be taking up the next bill on our agenda, which is House Bill 4433, display of the 10 Commandments. And I believe the sponsor would take this time to introduce the bill. We'll proceed.
Point of order.
Oh, yes, Senator Van Lowe.
Before we start this, can I just ask a clarifying question?
Yes, certainly.
Okay, so for the last bill, you said that we can't take the current economic situation into account for the bill. We have to go back in time to 2013. It's my understanding that we can't take whether the bill was passed or not into account, but we can consider the current situation that we're in, lest we can't remember what it was like back in 2013 or whenever this next bill is coming up.
Yeah, so in regards to financials specifically and data, it's typically, we typically ask that students use data that was in place at the time of the bill's writing.
Okay.
So
for this next one, what is the date that we're thinking of then?
So this next bill, that is a very good point, and I really do truly appreciate this. This was written in 2005.
Okay,
However,
and then
yeah, go ahead.
The conversation we had previous to everyone else coming on then, does that factor in or not?
Yeah, I believe in in this, since this isn't specific data or specific specific budgetary constraints, that we're allowing the philosophy of a movement that may be in place currently to be part of the discussion on this bill.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you for clarifying that. I apologize. The rules have always been a little fuzzy to me as well. So we will move forward with that. And if the senator, what senator will be speaking to the bill, sponsoring the bill? Senator Ho, thank you so much. If you would begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 4433, if passed, will allow all historical documents, including those that are religious in nature, to be displayed alongside and in the same manner as other secular documents significant to America's past. This bill allows for equality in representing all aspects of American history, and it also allows equality in displaying all religions and secular artifacts that have impacted the history of the United States. America has a deep and rich history, and the ideas that inspired the founding of our nation are still evident in our own society and government today. And some of these aspects were, in fact, indeed drawn from religious documents. In allowing these documents to be displayed alongside other artifacts from other origins, it gives impartiality to all pieces of American history. For these reasons, I urge my fellow committee members to join me in voting yay for House Bill 4433.
Thank you, Senator. I'll entertain a debate now. Is there anyone who'd like to speak to the bill? Senator Wong,
I have a question.
please.
Okay, so you mentioned that all historical documents, including the ones with religious origins, would be allowed to be displayed in public. Other than Christianity, what other historical documents that are religious in origin have impacted this country?
Well, I cannot give a definitive list of every single document that has impacted U.S. history. The bill does cite the Ten Commandments as an example, but if there was any evidence that another document from another religion besides Christianity, if there is evidence that it did indeed have an impact on the United States, then it would also be allowed to be displayed.
Senator Lily Van Lowe.
I would just like to ask the bill sponsors if they have a metric in mind of what determines the impact on our nation's history. And a follow-up question is the term history, how are the bill sponsors defining that? Because technically history could be last week, last year, or all the way back to the founding.
Well, I guess I will take this opportunity to introduce Amendment G1.
Thank you, Senator. Amendment G1 from logo screen.
Yes.
Senator Ho offers to amend page 2, line 10 after governing unit by inserting 3, as used in this act, documents, records, or objects of historic significance are defined as documents, records, or objects that have had an important or profound effect on the founders of American and their writings that are implemented in America's legal and governmental customs or traditions, or that are relevant to modern Americans' understanding of American history. 4, as used in this act, impact is defined as a strong effect on the history of this state or country. All right, Senator, Senator Ho, would you like to briefly speak to this amendment and the need for it? And then we'll entertain a question from Senator Harris.
Yes, this amendment helps clarify what exactly historical significance means, and those that will be displayed are those that, as the amendment says, that have had a strong effect on the founders of America and their writings, or that are implemented in America's legal system, or that are relevant to modern Americans' understanding of their history. And so this simply just clears up what the criteria are for a document to be displayed.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Harris?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to mention that this amendment contains a typing error in subsection 3. I think it would be best for this amendment to be brought up again once the writers have taken the proper time to ensure the quality of its constitution.
Thank you, Senator. Could you point out specifically that error?
As the language is stated, as used in this act, documents, records, or objects of historical significance are defined as documents, records, or objects that have had an important or profound effect on the founders of American and their writings.
Thank you, Senator. I certainly see your point. Do we have other questions to the amendment or, yeah, Senator Tim Van Lowe, thank you.
Are we allowed to adjust the amendment, or do we have to vote on it as it's written?
We would have to bring it up as a separate amendment, which has not been submitted at this time. So.
Okay. Because I would also point out that probably it should be United States as opposed to America.
Mr. Chairman, I will point out that the amendment as it was submitted by Logos Green did not have the typo, so that was an error on our part in formatting the amendment for this debate.
Fascinating, Mr. Clerk. I would love to have another committee meeting where we investigate just exactly how errors of that proportion can be made. And I would like to formally apologize to Senator Ho and Senator Norman for that error on our part. I will fix that typo, specifically changing American to America in our Google Doc that the other committee members are looking at. But I would like to refer back to Senator Van Lowe about his other comment.
Right. In reality, we are not America. We are the United States of America. And as the supporting arguments refer to our country as the United States, it might be better termed that way if we're allowed to change it.
Yeah, it would, in my understanding, I agree, Senator Van Lowe, that would include, I believe, South America, Latin America, Central America. There's many leaders and writings from those regions of the world that may not necessarily impact what I believe, anyways, as our founding. But I'll leave that up to debate. Is there another question? Senator Wong, I believe you had one. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to ask, what does it mean when you say, what is relevant to the modern American's understanding of American history? What is the modern American's understanding of American history?
Thank you, Senator. Senator Norman.
Thank you, Chairman. If I may clarify something, if I may clarify the question that Senator Wong is asking, is she asking why it is important that Americans know history, or is she asking what is a American's understanding of history?
I think, and if I may speak real quick, Senator, I think she's referring to what is relevant to the modern American's understanding of history and how we used to shape that. But Senator Wong, I'll let you clarify your question.
Yeah, that is true. What do you mean by what is relevant to the modern American's understanding of American history?
Yeah, so I guess I would second that question, Senator Norman. What is relevant, and who decides what is relevant? I know this amendment was offered to clarify, but when throwing terms such as relevant around, it seems still very vague to me.
Thank you, Chairman. A document of relevance to the United States is anything that had an effect on those who created documents such as the Constitution, documents which we view as the law of our land. So that's how I personally would define it. As there is not a definition in the amendment, I apologize for that, but that's how I would define that term.
Thank you. Yeah, Senator Moen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just curious, why should we limit our discussion of what is relevant or significant to the modern American and just the government in general by what was relative and specific to the founders? The United States as a country has been around for over 200 years, and through that time we've had multiple various leaders or movements that have all had significant impact on America as a whole, many of which were religiously inspired. Why should those not be included as relevant or of importance to America and not be given the same treatment as something that happened to be significant to the gentlemen founding the country?
Senator Ho.
in response, the amendment does say that either it is important to the founders or that is relevant to modern Americans' understanding of American history. So with that, it would include documents that did impact other key leaders in America's history besides the founders.
Senator Harris?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to ask Senator who is deciding what object has had an influence on American history and the United States legislation and founding? And case by case, how is anything going to be decided as to whether or not a document has had an influence?
I'm going to interrupt.
Especially,
I'm going to interrupt briefly, Senator, to remind everyone that we are talking about Amendment G1 still, and not the bill as a whole. So just please try to keep your comments to the amendment. We'll vote on that shortly. So, Senator Harris, you can complete your comment, or Senator Ho can respond.
thank you, Mr. Chair. I was asking case by case as an object is brought up to potentially be displayed, how will it be measured if a particular document has had an impact on American history and the United States general traditions, especially considering documents that may have had an impact on founding documents if those documents have not been clearly cited by the writers of those founding documents.
So I'd like to clarify, are you asking then who is proposing to display these documents and who's deciding what impact they've had? Is that what you're asking?
You can respond, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is, how are you planning to measure whether or not a document has had a significant influence on the United States history?
Well, I would like to remind that this bill it encompasses a lot of documents. Simply it encompasses all documents and artifacts that have had an impact on US history. And so I think to answer your question, it's going to have to depend on the case. What document is it? And we're going to have to evaluate it based on the document or artifact itself, how much impact they have had.
Thank you. I would like to point out one thing that I do appreciate about the amendment, that it does specify documents that were implemented, or important or profound effect on the founders of America and their writings. So that does, as my understanding, Senator, that narrows it quite a bit to not documents that have continued to define us, or is that your intent with the rest of the amendment? When we say America's legal and government customs and traditions, is that continuous, or are you still specifically referring, it is one sentence, still specifically referring to the founding era and the founders of the country? Are those the documents you're referring to, or are we advocating perhaps the writings of Malcolm X be publicly displayed as they've impacted the laws or customs and traditions of our country? Or are you specifically referring to an earlier period?
Well, the first part of the amendment does specifically refer to the founding, but I believe that if a writing has had an impact on a key impact on the core events of American history, then this bill would encompass it.
Thank you. So the writings such as Joseph Smith and others that have arguably impacted American history since that time.
Arguably, if they have impacted American history, then yes, they can also be allowed to be displayed.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Van Loo?
Yeah, I was just going to say that's what the last phrase of that sentence is.
I just wanted to clarify the intent. Thank you. Yeah, Senator Moen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just curious about the last line of the amendment. We would have subdivision 4. As used in this act, impact is defined as a strong effect on the history of the state or country. Why should we be limited to items that have a strong impact on history? Just hypothetically, if there were a government-funded museum that was, say, displaying a Bible that one of the founders had, that particular document may or may not be able to be linked to any strong effect on history, and yet could still be considered to be of some reasonable importance. I'm just curious as to why we would limit it to specifically a strong effect, and how we would define what a strong effect is.
Do we have a response, senators? This is a valid concern. I'd also like to piggyback on that, Senator Moan, and just saying that I'm very concerned that we'll end up with a court case every time someone applies to display a historical document such as this, especially when we delve into the religious realm. Thomas Jefferson owned many religious books and studied many philosophies, as I'm sure you're aware, including writing his own version of the Gospels. And so I'd really, in a nation which aspires or claims to have Christian heritage, I see, especially in our current times, quite a bit of controversial issues there. And I'm afraid that every time someone applies to display a document like this, or attempts to, that will wind up with a costly and drawn out court case. And that this is precedent that I, in my limited understanding of our legal system, I say as a senator, but that we may end up in multiple court cases, because precedent is not so easily set with documents such as this. You may have a court case over displaying a Quran, but that is a very distinct document. And I worry that if we bring up a similar document that is not, they're not so easily compared, that we could, with one case, set precedent and then continue on from there. I'm worried that this is a multiple court case legal battle that would be costly to the state, and just time consuming, when it could possibly be clarified here in committee with a different amendment. Do you have a comment on that, Senator Norman or Ho? You know, the possibility of a legal battle to really define this, since we don't have a set body or even a vote by a legislature to decide what is relevant or what has had a strong impact, or any of these other terms that are so vague in your amendment. I just reiterate again, how do we avoid a legal battle with each one of these? That is my main question. Senator Norman, please.
Thank you, Chairman. There's no good way that you're going to avoid every single legal battle. You're always going to have people who are offended no matter what the laws are. What we were trying to do with this amendment was merely define some of the terms which were in this bill as it was, just so to remove some of the vagueness of those terms and give a stronger definition.
Senator Van Loo?
Yeah, I agree with Senator Norman. If we make that a determining factor of whether we pass a bill, we're not going to pass any bills.
Very good, thank you. Senator Sonny, did you have a question or a comment?
I would move the amendment.
All right, wonderful, thank you. The amendment's been moved. Do I have a second? Senator Moan, thank you very much. All right, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
As to Amendment G1, Senator Harris,
No.
Senator Wong,
No.
Senator Ho,
Yes.
Senator Norman,
Yes.
Senator Hawley,
No.
Senator Moan,
Nay.
Senator Suni,
Yes.
Senator Lily Van Loo,
No.
Senator Tim Van Loo,
Yes.
and Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Okay, as to Amendment G1, there are 5 yes votes and 5 no votes.
Oh, man. Seeing an insufficient number of votes, the amendment does not pass. Yes, Senator Van Loo.
I would just like to say I admire the specificity that Logos Green put into this bill. I think it's fantastic. My only hang up was using America instead of United States, because that is a loophole that a lot of things could slip through. But if it were that little tweak, I would be all for it. So good job.
Well, thank you. And just, Senator, real quick, this is the amendment. We're about to vote on the bill. So we did just vote on the amendment. I believe G1. I would like to say that I do support the amendment in theory. I do think it needed a little bit more work, but appreciate the effort there. So if we'll continue on, are there any more comments to the bill as a whole before we take a vote? Senator Hawley. Senator, you appear to be muting and unmuting. There we go.
Technical difficulties. Okay, here we go. I guess I would really appreciate an explanation for why the sponsors feel this bill is necessary. When you look at Supreme Court precedent, a religious text, be it the Bible or something else, is allowed in a public display if it's done in a neutral fashion. And what this bill seems to do is to allow for the display of the 10 Commandments when it's displayed with other documents in a way that is already allowed under Establishment Clause jurisprudence. So I'm wondering if the sponsors have a specific case in mind, or what it is that is kind of the impetus for this legislation, because as I look at it under current Establishment Clause jurisprudence, I'm not sure that it's necessary.
We feel that we support this bill because if it's passed, it will allow all aspects of American history to be displayed. And we feel that right now, the religious aspects of history are not given enough attention, I would say, or they're not allowed. Americans are not allowed to, not that they're not allowed, but they're not allowed to be displayed on. We feel that this bill is important because it allows for all of history to be displayed, and it's about equality in representing all aspects of America.
Senator Sonny.
Yeah, Senator Ho, if you'd yield to a question, I want to follow up on Senator Hawley's question. Senator Ho, so are you aware of an instance, or Senator Norman, are you aware of an instance where a religious document or object was displayed with other documents, public records, and objects of historical significance, was displayed in the same manner as those documents, and did not focus more attention on that religious object, and yet could not be displayed? Is there a case where something was displayed that fulfilled all of these requirements and that was not allowed?
Senator Norman, I'm sorry, I can't quite see your hand there, Senator Norman. Thank you. Please go ahead. I saw fingertips for a moment.
Thank you, Chairman. Senator Sonny, in answer to your question, I cannot name a specific case. I know there are cases out there, and I ran across a couple in my research. I could not name a specific one off the top of my head, but there have been issues with this in the past, and that's why we're trying to get this bill passed.
And when you say you ran across some in your research, do you mean that you ran across instances where religious objects were removed, or instances where religious objects that were part of a display that would have fit these categories was removed?
The latter, sir.
Okay. And then my second question, if I may, Mr. Chair, I'm a little concerned that this may read restrictively, and you know, perhaps this is ignorant, I'm not a lawyer, but we've created an instance where you can display a religious document or object if it fulfills all three of these criteria. Would that suggest to a court that a religious object or document could not be displayed if it did not fit all of these criteria? In other words, if I wanted to put up a nativity, have I now put in code something that implies that I can't put up a nativity on a publicly without fulfilling these other three situations? Can I now not display a religious object that doesn't have strong historical impact on the United States of America?
Senator Norman, yeah.
If I may answer Senator Sonny's question, I realize your concern, but this bill is more concerned with documents themselves, documents or other symbols of not necessarily of religious. That is primarily religious, but not necessarily religious documents. There are some documents out there which have been refused to be shown or displayed. So that's what it's more concerned with, not necessarily a nativity or something like that.
Thank you. Senator Van Loo?
Yeah, first of all, I would say it clearly says document or other objects. So that would, I think the nativity would fall in with that. But my question is, it's very curious that the Michigan Jewish Conference opposes the bill and the National Council of Jewish Women oppose the bill. And we're talking about their 10 commandments. So what on page 4 of the PDF here, opposing arguments on the display of the 10 commandments, it gives an explanation for that in the sense that the various religious traditions have a different way of different words for the 10 commandments. So which ones are we going to use?
Yeah. That would be that's an excellent question, and we are about out of time for committee today. But I would like to, I guess, pose a similar question. You know, if again, who decides what translation of the Bible we utilize when we post the 10 Commandments? Senator Wong, do you have a question as well, or? Oh no. Okay. All right. Excellent point, Senator Van Loo. Thank you. Is there anyone else? We're about out of time, but I'd like to entertain any final questions or any comments from the sponsoring members. Senator Harris, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to ask Logos Green a question. So this bill you're proposing allows religious documents and such to be displayed on government-owned property. Don't you think it's likely that this would be interpreted by the public as a direct endorsement of a given religion and thusly directly against the First Amendment?
Well, I would like to take this time. I'm going to read the First Amendment, or at least part of it. The First Amendment reads, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech. So in response to this, we do not believe that this is violating the First Amendment, because the First Amendment says that the government cannot make like a national religion or something like that. And to set up a religious document as display is not forcing anyone to become part of that faith. And it is also upholding, this bill also upholds the right to free exercise of religion for the people.
Senator Van Loo, please.
In light of the First Amendment, this bill seems to restrict the exercise of the First Amendment by making these conditions. It seems like we don't need this bill, that just having the First Amendment is sufficient enough. But this bill actually restricts the First Amendment.
Any response, Senator? Senator Norman? And this, I think, will probably be our last response, our last interaction here.
Thank you, Chairman. To answer Senator Van Loo's question or concern, The goal in this bill is to allow all documents of U.S. history to be displayed. Primarily religious ones, but also all documents. And right now there is that bias against religious documents that they cannot be displayed. So I do not believe that this is hindering anything. I think this allows someone from the U.S. to fully appreciate the full spectrum of history and not just one side of it.
Thank you, Senator Norman. I'd like to ask one quick follow-up question. In light of current events, which I've been waiting to be brought up, you're advocating that you just said all documents of historical significance, all objects of historical significance should be displayed. And this bill is again referring to specifically public land, government-owned buildings, public property. So are you advocating then, Senator, that some of these Confederate memorials, memorials to slavery and some of the darker shadows of our past, that those should be allowed to still be displayed, no matter what the current sentiment or where we are as a nation now that we've moved beyond that? How do you address that in light of current events and some of the philosophies that are driving the toppling of some statues and even the peaceful advocation for removal of some statues and historical objects? Senator Norman or Senator Ho can respond to that. Senator Ho.
Well, this bill doesn't say that every single object or document they should be displayed. It's simply allowing them to be displayed. And so it doesn't necessarily mean, oh, we're going to represent the dark side of American history as well.
All right, Senator Wong.
I have a question for Logos Green.
Very quickly, please.
Would this bill benefit Christianity in any way?
Senator Norman.
To answer Senator Wong's question, no, it would not benefit. If there are documents from other religions that have had an impact, as the bill states, those would be allowed to be displayed as well. We are not limiting this to Christian documents in any way, shape, or form.
All right, thank you, Senator Norman. I apologize, committee members. We are very out of time, as the clerk has reminded me. So, Mr. Clerk, if you would, please call the roll. As a reminder, members, we are voting on the bill in its entirety. No amendments. If you would just vote yay or nay.
Yeah, for the bill HR 4433, display 10 commandments. Senator Harris,
No.
Senator Wong,
No.
Senator Ho,
Yes.
Senator Norman,
Yes.
Senator Hawley,
No.
Senator Moan,
No.
Senator Suni,
Yes.
Senator Lily Van Lowe,
Yes.
Senator Tim Van Lowe,
No.
and Mr. Chairman.
Oh man, members, this was an excellent argument, but unfortunately I'm going to have to vote no on this bill.
So as to HR 4433, that leaves us with 4 yes votes and 6 no votes.
Bill receiving an insufficient number of votes does not pass. Our first vote that was not a tie, though, members, then that's maybe next week we'll have an uneven number of committee members. But I really appreciate all of your work. I was just telling a few of the committee members earlier, our additional committee members today, that Emma and I know Emma Wong and Senator Harris at least have not done House or Senate. They were able to sneak in because they're getting ready to graduate in that. So they've done really an excellent job pulling together 2 hours every afternoon is what we've met for with caucuses. And I really appreciate them and how hard they've worked. But of course, Senator Norman and Senator Ho did a fantastic job as well. You guys, if I could encourage you in one way, is just to have a little bit more factual information. The numbers and the need for the EpiPen bill was just not apparent to me. And then there's a little confusion about really any specific cases of the 10 Commandments being taken down, which we know there are. But I want to hear you tell me that. I want you to give me the reason, the need for this bill, just like the summary worksheets we worked through. Are there any of the other committee members who would have a brief word of encouragement or critique to our member, Senator Moen, briefly?
I just want to say both teams did a fantastic job. I think this particular format lends very much towards the opposition's favor because you can just sit down and rake the bill through the coals, and it can be difficult sometimes to really push your supporting points. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that to me sort of fell short. I didn't feel a compelling urgency for why we need the bills, and it didn't seem like there was necessarily enough data to go, here's the problem, here's clear-cut examples of the problem, this is how the bill fixes it. But just in light of the fact that there were so many questions coming at you, you guys did a fantastic job eloquently handling the questions. You did a great job of providing a reasonable and well thought out answer. It's just some of the details were lacking, but great job to both teams.
Great. Senator Van Loo, please. Yeah.
I just echo everything that Senator Moen said. You were well prepared. Doing this with only 2 people on a team is very difficult, but you did a very good job, and you are to be commended for that.
Yeah, excellent, guys. I really appreciate all of you. You guys are doing a great job. We're going to jump over the 4 junior senators. We will. That's the wrong body of legislature, but that's okay. We're going to jump back over to the lob, to the Legislative Office Building, and join the final session. So just jump in, have your videos on, have your mics muted. And let's just say a quick verbal or nonverbal thank you to our additional committee members who took time out of their day to come and join with you. I would love to see all 4 of you come back next summer. If we have this in person, I would love to see what the 4 of you could do with a whole week of prep and coaching, because you guys took, I'm going to say 10 hours, which is what we had, 2 hours each day, but that includes our committee time today. You guys have done a phenomenal job, and I am really proud of each of you individually, and I look forward to seeing what you do with what you learned here and moving forward. So thank you all. Thank you to our additional committee members. And we are going to jump into the lob now, as we call it. So thank you all. And Gil will probably end the meeting here shortly. Thank you again.